Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session with Project Pro, where we speak with experts on use cases of AI, particularly generative AI. Today, we are focused on generative AI's role in data storytelling. And we have an expert in data storytelling with us, Dr. Angelica Lo Duca. She is the author of this book titled Data Storytelling with Generative AI using Python and Altair, published by Manning. She also has a PhD in computer science, almost 14 years of experience as a researcher at the Institute of Informatics and Telematics as part of the National Research Council in Italy. And she's also an adjunct professor of data journalism at the University of Pisa in Italy. Thank you so much for taking time to do this, Angelica. It's very nice to have you with us.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. To begin with, it would be really helpful to understand, Angelica, what is the role of data storytelling in making these complex data accessible to the audience? And what exactly, how is data storytelling different from traditional BI or business intelligence?
Yes, well, data storytelling is communicating data through a story. And to be recognized as a story, you should have a narrative. This means that you should have characters and plots. And so while in business intelligence, you only analyze data, in data storytelling, your objective, your goal is different because you have to communicate your data. And this is very important because data storytelling is a type of data communication. But you have different types of data communication. Data communication can be data reporting, data presentation, or data storytelling. Data reporting means describing your data. So it could be simply, for example, the output of your business intelligence tool, for example, a dashboard, or a written technical report, such as a PDF document, which documents, reports all your data. Instead, when you have data presentation, for example, through a PowerPoint presentation, through some slides, you usually present and organize data in a way that are understandable by your audience. Data storytelling instead is different because with data storytelling, you need to tell a story and you have to organize your data in a way that you tell a story and you engage your audience. Why do we want to tell stories? Because we all love stories. We listen to stories since we are children, and so we love story, and the message can be transmitted better to a story. So the main advantage of using data storytelling is that you can catch the attention of your audience in a different way compared to data reporting and presentation. This also means, however, that when you tell stories with data, you don't look at the details of your data because the objective of data storytelling is not analyze data, but communicating them. And for this reason, you can lose some details of information to promote instead the communication and to make sure that your audience understands the message that you want to communicate. And so you use data stories, and in particular stories, to make a concept more memorable so that your audience can remember your data also after after years, months. Yes, this is the difference.
Okay, makes sense. So just from what I understood, what you said now, is it right to say that in data storytelling, you are focused more on the insights, action-oriented outcomes instead of the data, specific data? Would that be right?
Yes, that's right, because you have to communicate the results of your analysis in a way that, in more cases, drives the audience to action. There are different types of action. For example, based on the objective of your story. For example, if your objective is to help decision makers to make decisions, you should suggest the decision makers, which are in this case your audience, you should help them to make the decisions. Instead, if your audience is a general public who wants to learn something, maybe the action that you want to give them is to learn more about the topic. If your objective instead is, if your audience instead is a general public, for example, who would be entertained with your data, your objective, your action should be share your story with the others. Based on who is your audience, also the action changes. And so, but maybe you tell different stories with the same insights based on your audience.
Makes sense. And if I may again ask there, so for example, inside a traditional company, there is the business team. The business team sends a request for some analytics to the data science or analytics team. They crunch the numbers. They send it to a BI team, which puts a dashboard or slides, and they send it back to the business team, right? So who should learn data storytelling most? Is it the BI team or is it the data science team? Or how do you recommend?
I think it could be a skill that all steps should have. But in particular, the business AI team should be able to communicate with the final audience, which is the decision makers team, which should make decisions. But in all the steps, if the communication is not correct, the flow is interrupted. And so maybe a wrong communication passes from a step to another. So it's very important that all the departments, all the categories in the company should mature these communication skills, especially using data storytelling, because data storytelling helps to make stories more memorable. There is also a broader topic of storytelling within companies, which helps people inside the company to remain in the company, because they can make the company, they make mature a feeling where they belong to the company, thanks to the storytelling. And the same could be done with data storytelling.
Thank you. And getting to the point that you cover a lot in your recent book, what role do you think generative AI can play in data storytelling? Can we just give it a bunch of data and write a very detailed prompt which it can follow to automatically generate the storytelling pieces, or what else can it do?
Yes, well, I think that so far the technology is not mature to do it, to take all the data and extract an insight and build a data story. Maybe in the future we could be able to do it, but we should be always careful of this, because this is also always an automatized process which could be dangerous, and we should be careful. But in the meantime, you can use data storytelling only, generative AI only with the data storytelling part. I mean, you can use it to build stories. There is an interesting paper by Lee and Wong and others, which say who say how to use generative AI in data storytelling. And there are 4 different ways to use this. The first one is to use generative AI as a creator of stories. In this way, you leave all the task to generative AI, which builds the full story based on your data. The second level is to use generative AI as an optimizer to fine-tune your human-created content. The third level is to use generative AI as a reviewer, which means to evaluate the task performance of humans and suggest potential issues or improvements. And the final level is to use generative AI as an assistant on specific tasks according to your requirements. This list is a decreasing list in order of automation. I think that in my book, I propose to use generative AI as an assistant, because I think that the tools are not mature to do things automatically. Although recently I did a very fun research with a colleague of mine who is an archaeologist, and we took some scientific documents on the Iron Age, and we asked generative AI to generate tales, fictional tales, based on these documents. The result is very interesting and promising, and we hope it paves the way towards a way to communicate data in a different, to create stories based on, for example, scientific documents, to communicate to a different audience the results of analysis. But at this stage, I think that in, for example, in business analytics and so on, the tools are not mature yet. My idea is to use this tool as assistant, which to use them to help you to do your daily tasks. But at this point, there is also a reluctance by data storytellers and also data journalists, because I think that there are not enough training programs to learn these tools. And so there is a certain fear of using them, because most people maybe can think that this generative AI will replace them. But I think that that's not true. The idea is to use them as an assistant to help us in the more boring tasks.
I had 2 follow-up questions on that. One is the archaeology project that you did sounds really cool and fun. What kind of data did you give this LLM? Was it a set of dates and events, or what kind of data was it?
No, we used the retrieval augmented generation to fine-tune our model, which was GPT-4 and GPT-3.5, and we used I think about 20 scientific papers on the topic. They were provided as PDF documents. And all these documents were about the Iron Age, with the specific descriptions of the fire, of the location, the walls used in that period. And the idea was to generate generate a tale. And based on the granularity of the prompt that we provided, the generative AI was able to generate very accurate tales. And our paper will be published soon. And so my colleague also already presented it at a conference, and it was appreciated. We hope it paves the way to a new kind of research.
Nice. Congratulations on the publication.
Thank you.
And when you mentioned that you would recommend that Gen AI be used as an assistant in the data storytelling process, can you maybe help us understand a few examples of what kind of tasks would you give the LLM or Gen AI for data storytelling?
Yes, for example, also in my book, I propose to use in this way. For example, when you have to build a story, first of all, you need to write a plot of your story, the characters, but this is another topic. You can do this by your own without using generative AI. And then when you are designing the scenes to add to your story, the sequences to add to your stories, you can use the generative AI, for example, to generate the single sequences, which is a very technical skill and duty. For example, to generate a chart, to generate an image, a picture to add to your story, because when you tell a story, it's very important to give a face to your data, to represent people behind your data. And so it's important to include, for example, a person connected to your data, obviously. For example, if you are talking about the temperature increase, for example, you can add a picture of people suffering the hot weather, for example. And this reinforces the audience to remember your message. And you can use generative AI to generate this type of images. Otherwise, you should use stock images, but sometimes you don't, you can't find the image that you are exactly looking for. And for this reason, you can generate images through generative AI. Or I think that the most important part where you can use generative AI is to tailor your message, to use it to tailor your message to an audience. For example, you write a generic title, temperature anomalies, for example. And then you can use generative AI to tailor your title, your text to your audience. This means you describe the type of audience that you have, and you ask generative AI to generate different possible titles for your stories. This is very important because you have the plot, you have defined the plot and the characters, but the part where you fine-tune your story can be done by generative AI. For example, you can also use generative AI for building the summary of a document, and then work on this summary and re-elaborate by tailoring it to an audience. I think that in summary, this can be used, generative AI can be used to tailor your message to the audience.
That makes a lot of sense, because a lot of the promise in generative AI is about customization.
Yes.
And especially with data storytelling, rather than sending the same message to a broad audience.
Yes.
If you can build something that's specific to each person,
yes,
that's very valuable.
Yes, maybe you can also say the generative AI to summarize your story in one sentence and append your sentence to your email. Because you can tell stories also in your emails. At the end of your, when you have the signature, you can tell a short story. And you can ask generative AI to summarize your story or to adapt to different media, LinkedIn, other social media. Maybe in future you can convert your story in YouTube videos, but this is also already built, for example, cartoons based on your story for the public of children, for example. And this is a very promising field of application. The part of business analytics, I think that it's not mature, and it's a different topic compared to data storytelling.
That makes a lot of sense. If you have a core of the message, you can use various mediums or artifacts to convey the same message in different story format. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And since people are involved here, and then how do you think about biases or ethical considerations as part of storytelling to people?
Yes, the main problem is that generative AI is generated using models that are produced by humans. And humans in nature are biased. We are not perfect, and for this reason, also everything we produce is not perfect. And that's the same for generative AI models. We can't pretend to produce something perfect if we, as producer, as creator, are not perfect. And this is a truth that we can't negate. But, however, we could improve our models. The problem here is that currently these models are trained, most of them, on data generated on the web. But if you, and this data, if you think about this quantity of data, that appears huge. But in reality, the data on the web is a small portion of the all data generated by the humanity. Because there are, for example, tons of books in libraries which cover hundreds and thousands of years of history of people. And these books cover also a wide range of wisdom generated by philosophers, historians, literate people, very important scientists. And these documents are not considered by generative AI. Maybe in future we could replace this web content, which is very informal, with this formal content, which is more specific, and it's the fruit of the history of mankind. In this way, we could reduce the bias. And also, I know that there are different initiatives, especially in the research field, to bring all these digital humanity tools into the generative AI. By Tobias Bacher, who talks about algorithmic bias. And he says in his book, very interesting, that indeed the bias generated by machines is always less than that generated by men, because machines autocorrect them. And so if maybe the decision should be made by a machine, this decision could be better than the one the same decision taken by a person.
That's
And
true.
so I think I'm confident on this, and I hope that in future this bias could be reduced, and this could mean a progress for mankind to reduce the bias not only in artificial intelligence, but also in the real life. Because if we think about this bias in the reality and we can reduce it in the real life, obviously this reduction will be mapped also to the artificial intelligence. This is
And
a
also,
problem. Yes.
no, please go ahead.
I think it's a philosophical problem, not a technological problem.
That's a very good point you make about bias, which is machines will follow instructions if you want them to reduce bias, but humans won't follow instructions very well, right? You can't take your bias and keep it aside. It's part of you. It's very difficult to take it out.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that's a really good point that you made. And in all the research and consulting that you have done, uh, which industries or companies or use cases have you seen data storytelling being done very well? Very good examples of people or companies or industries doing this very well.
I think that there are different. The big example of not
Mhm,
data storytelling but
mhm,
storytelling
mhm,
is Apple. At the times of Steve Jobs, storytelling was the focus of his presentations.
mhm,
He always told stories while presenting. And
mhm,
maybe we should take him as an example of a great storyteller, and also we can adapt this to data storytelling. We need to communicate data. We cannot be only analysts
mhm,
of data. We must tell our stories.
mhm,
And I say you more that behind the data, all the data that we analyze, there are always people. And so we must tell their stories. This could be a message that elevates us from our computer and bring us to a higher level. We
mhm,
must be the voice of people behind data. And
mhm,
this is very important. And many companies, I think that do that. There are many influential people that help other people to do storytelling. I know many influencers
mhm,
such as Brent Dykes, so he's a very popular storyteller, data storyteller. But there are other people such as Salma Sultana, many interesting people. And I suggest also to follow them because
mhm,
they are very expert in this domain. Instead, in the domain of combining data storytelling with generative AI, there is a less, there is a there are fewer people, but the field is evolving. I suggest you to follow Yum Wang, who is a researcher from Microsoft. She is very active in research
mhm,
about data storytelling and generative AI. And
mhm.
this is an
Okay.
I.
Thanks for pointing us to those people and resources. And just final couple of topics. One is what tips or guidance or pointers would you have for all of us to be better data storytellers?
Yes, well, the first thing is to change your mentality.
Mm,
You are not a machine which analyzes data. You are a person. And for this reason, you have to communicate with other persons, other people in your company, in your team, but also with your family and your colleagues, other people, friends. And for this reason, you need to learn how to communicate, specifically how to communicate data. And to look, you have to look at the people behind your data. And for this, in my book, I tell a short story about an experience that I had, and which was very strange for me. I worked on a data set about died peoples. I had to calculate some statistics about their age and other similar stuff. Then with my colleagues, we went to the cemetery where these people were buried.
Mhm.
The impact was terrible. I realized all the numbers and all the people names that I looked at in my Excel file were written in the tombs. It was terrible. I realized that in my Excel file there weren't only numbers, but there were the presence of people. And so my suggestion is look at people behind your data and try to tell their stories. Even if your story is the story of product, please look at the people who use your product. And try to understand why these people don't buy or buy your product. If you can interview these people, get a direct contact with them, because this makes you a human.
Makes sense. That's very well said. And finally, Dr. Angelica, the book that you wrote on Gen AI and data storytelling, could you maybe help us understand who's the target for the book and like a summary of what you cover in it?
Yes, the book is about how to integrate data storytelling in generative AI in Python. So the target audience is people that knows Python and already knows how to program at the list at the entry level, how to open, for example, a pandas data frame in Python, how to load the data set and so on. But the book is not only technical. It gives also a high level and conceptual framework to build data stories. In the book, I use the DIKW pyramid, which is a pyramid which helps you to transform data into wisdom. The steps are data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And so you start from raw data and you follow a path to transform this data in wisdom with the help of generative AI. At the bottom layers, you will use generative AI to build the charts, essentially to transform and enrich the chart. At the higher levels, from knowledge to wisdom, you will use generative AI as an assistant of knowledge, who will provide you with the knowledge of mankind to enrich your stories, tailor them to your audience, and also to tell your stories to different audiences. There are many examples, case studies in the book, and so I think it could be a starting point to learn how to program to tell stories with your data. It's not a simple data visualization, but book, but it's more.
Okay. Thank you. So one of the things, so since this is a podcast focused on Gen AI, one of the things we do as part of the podcast, Angelica, is that we give an LLM your LinkedIn profile, and we ask the LLM to ask you a couple of questions. So I have two questions here. Can I ask you that? It's from ChatGPT. So the first one is, what inspired you to write this book on data storytelling and Gen AI?
My passion and my love for stories. Since I was a child, I write stories, and I love stories. Then I followed my studies on computer science, and eventually I come to combine them, and I'm really excited about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking time to do this. We all learned a lot about how to do a better job with data rather than just analysis. Really appreciate you taking time to do this.
Well, thank you to you. I'm really glad to be here today with you.